different topic altogether apart from the scientific learnings we did today. But this is more important, right?
The most important.
It's not just show me the money, It's more important than money. All of you in this room will do very well financially. That's not the goal of the talk of contract negotiation. It's more of peace of mind. What are you getting into? More consistent what you expect when you get into a new job. What they expect from you is very crucial to know before you go in. It's not just about the money part. Money part is the least part of the problem. It'll be the more work flow, how you fit in the group, and what's your schedule going to be, and what's your future going to be. That's very crucial to know. That's the important part of this talk. So I'll spend a few minutes. It's 10 minutes. It's very short, but I'm available here afterwards if you guys want to talk to me anyway about it. So contracts, who are the employers? One thing I did not put there, of course, academic institutions like Mount Sinai, NYU, big institutions. Number two, after that, hospital employments, you have the private practice. Most of you will be the academic settings in teaching institutions, but some of you will be in the private practice as well. And with group practices, there's a good chance that, especially if you have a visa, that's J1 visa or some waivers you need to satisfy your visa requirements, you'll be looking into rural areas where not many academic centers are there. So you may be looking into private practices to do a job there and to see how to do. So apart from that, the new trend in cardiology is the hedge fund managers, hedge fund investors. Yeah, Wall Street guys buying up the practices and employing you as well on this. Some of them are in the already publicly traded companies. In primary care, they have an anesthesia, they have hospitalist groups. Now they started into cardiology the last couple of years. So you will don't be surprised if you join a group or something, they may be bought up by a hedge fund or a national company. They're merging and they change hands. They go into a lot of things are happening now, and that's scenario right now. That's the new part in the practice. So hospital employee negotiations, it's the base salary is pretty much, it's a demand supply. You want to stay in New York City, you're going to accept a lower salary. You want to go a small town, you demand more, you have more demand supply, you're going to be paid more. Just say there's an MGME average salary, you can look it up. That's not, what happens after that is what's the structure after the salary? After first year, 2 years, what's going to be the future? That's important because changing a job after first job, it can be painful or expensive. So you want to be right for the first time. What are the chances you're going to be first time? What do the statistics show? Almost 70% of us are going to change your first job. 70% chance you're going to change the first job. So it's very high, especially for cardiologists. It's very high. Interventionalists even higher. So negotiating, always you review the contract with a local lawyer, not a New York lawyer to negotiate in Florida. Okay, find somebody in the same state because state laws are different, state local rules are different. So it's important to find somebody. I was here doing fellowship. I had to find somebody in Orlando to find a lawyer for me to do when I moved to Florida. So it's always local attorneys, healthcare attorneys is where to go. You have to, because so many acronyms, so many language we don't know. It's a legal language. We don't know about the restrictions. Nobody taught us how to do a contract, right? So they're professionals. We need to rely on them. It can be expensive, but it's okay. Sometimes the practices will pay you back for that. It's their practice expense, for part expense for them. Later on, they can always reimburse it for you. So hospital. Next one is, of course, bonus. How the bonus structure going to be? RVU basis, productive base. It can be call based. A lot of things can change factors, and they increase as you renegotiate after a couple of years. It may change again. What most important thing is Your outside, what I see is what support they're going to give you. You can negotiate that. You're going to give nurse practitioners that help you practice. You give research assistants that help you practice. Number two is what's income from outside. For example, you're giving talks, teaching for your consultant for Medtronic or Abbott. You get paid directly from them. What is the involvement? What's the limits on that? What I didn't mention here is what if you invented something? For example, a new wire, new device, then your employer might be owning that patent because you're employed by them. So you may not own the patent if you invent something. So something need to be in contract, in clear cut in that negotiation part. So all contracts should have an exit plan, right? So you should know how to get out of it too. Same thing if it is now somebody wants to just terminate you without cause. If they're going to do it without cause, there had to be some negotiating factors for that. They should not restrict you from moving. You shouldn't be forced to move out of the city. You're already there. Your spouse has a job. Your kids are in school. You don't want to be changing all their lives based on your something that you're not anything fault at. No fault. So, how many of you know about the tail insurance? Raise your hands. How many of you know tail insurance? That's pretty good. I didn't know when I until I. So tail insurance can be expensive when it changes job, especially if it change the state or if it change the insurance carrier. It can be a lot of money. It can cost you. It can be up to $250,000 just to pay the fees. So that can be negotiated depending on how many years you're going to be with the company, with the hospital or group. You can negotiate that. They can prorate it to the years of employment that you have. That is something you can negotiate. Restricted covenants, of course, all the contracts will have some restricted covenants. They want to protect the business. If I'm employing somebody, I don't want him to go out and start practice next door. There will be mutual understandable effect that you're not going to hurt the business. That's the goal. So you can always negotiate that to your convenient or mutual understandable one. So private practice job, it's a little trickier than academic because each group is different, each dynamic is different. They can change over time. So I'll go quickly over this because some of you will end up here as well. We're going to may start some of you as an academic. I may move on to private practice. We've seen over the years. First visit, you see where you fit in the group. Whether this is something that you're going to like, where you fit in the group. Always take your spouse with you, please. If she doesn't like, your wife doesn't like it, your husband doesn't like it, it's not going to be fit location for their job and their likings. So very important to take them. So what are the questions you want to ask the private practice? You want to go and meet them, visit them, wine and dine with them, and then you tend to need to ask some clear-cut questions. How much is their overheads? What are the expense ratios? And then with the managers, you want to ask about what's the collection rates. Typically you bill for $1,000. How much do you think you're going to get paid? Probably 40% to 50%. So interventional procedures are less reimbursed. What's Medicare billing is different. What's Medicare payable is different. So does the private insurances follow whatever the Medicare does most of the time. Even though a little higher, it's in the same ratio. You want to know what's the collective receivables from there and what the payer makes in the group, in the area. For example, it's only Medicare, 90% Medicare population, you're risking change of Medicare reimbursement suddenly. So if you have mixed, you have one way. And then certain states have completely different HMOs. You have gone to Miami City, you have 70% maybe you're dealing with HMOs. Same thing in California. You have Kaiser Permanente there, you're dealing with those insurance companies. You want to know what those contracts are with the group you're going to be with. How much it's going to affect if they change the contract or something like that. Of course, restricted covenants, how many miles radius around your tail insurance, salary usually standard. Some things here are negotiable, are these sign-on bonus. It can be any amount. It can be $10,000 to $50,000. Usually they're given by the local hospitals. They provide you with the moving expenses, sign-on bonuses, retainer bonus too. After 2 years, you want to renegotiate again, you want to continue, they can pay you retainer fees as well. Again, bonus to that. Benefits, of course, 401k, health insurance. Student forgiveness, student loan forgiveness is another important one you want to negotiate and ask them if they can do that. Okay, partnership process. What happens is typically private practice, you go, they give you first year salary, second year salary. What happens after that? You're on your own, you already built up the practice. What is the process that you have into place before you join the group? You need to know. If they say, let's think about it 3 years later, no. Tell me what's the process you have in process now and negotiate accordingly. And typically, it takes about 1 to 2 years to build up your practice, and then you're able to support your salary and your expenses. So buy-in calculation, how do they buy in? So how much you have to pay in? Most of them have a CPAs. They have depreciation about the assets and the equipment they have, and they calculate each year. Based on that, they have a buy-in for your percentage of the partnership. You have to buy in whatever they paid up, equity paid in. So income distribution, they have different plans, different models. There's no standard there. So typically they have even distribution, or they have base salary and productivity bonus, or a mix of the two. The important thing is you have to find out what are the structure in place to change that in case as we move. What are the factors? If you say everybody has to vote, 100% voting, may not agree there. So you have to know what are the changes process if you want to go there. Income guarantee is another one that you may come across that hospitals offer. So they pay you until you pick up your reimbursements, your insurance payments come up. So that's typically the gap between day one you start to 6 months where you start cash flow coming in. The hospital fills in that gap. They pay you for those minus of your salary, whatever salary you take. Typically, they're forgiven if you stay there for 2 years. But if you leave within a year or two, before that time frame, you will be on the hook to pay back. So you may want to negotiate with your group or practice that they can share that with you if you have to leave the town. Once you in practice, of course, time limits are here, so we'll finish through very marketing part. There are a lot of help there to help you. And social media is a new thing that you can presence. If you don't want to do with anything with the contracts, it's still an option for start your own practice on yourself, solo. You don't need any employer. You can be your own employer. Still practice. Majid is on his own. Mm-hmm. Solo practice is not a bad idea. If you can sustain 6 months of your expenses, you're fine. All you need is hospital privileges and a place, an office address, which can be rental property. And you'll have third-party billing agencies, so many of them to help you with. If you can sustain 6 months of expenses, you're okay. Then you can be your own boss. So that's an option still exists there out there. Any questions?
So yeah, just a thing, I just want to tell you guys, so we have multiple academic and multiple prior practitioners here. So there's a good opportunity to ask any questions you have.
Dr. Attanti, we get this question a lot from our graduating people, actually. So 2 questions was, number one, at the first meeting, you talked about you want to see if it's a good fit. Is it okay to bring up money? And number 2, should people get contract lawyers?
Yes. Even before you go, you should have an attorney who's going to represent you. Even before, because they'll be very helpful to guide you through with them. Even before you meet the group, even the starting process, recruiters, typically they call you or you have a lead that you go into, that itself time you need to start with your attorneys.
Can you talk about building a vascular practice and how you divide your time between doing the procedures and clinic, reach out?
Thank you. That was a great talk. And can you talk about building a vascular practice? Like how do you divide your time when you're like reach out versus clinic versus actually doing those long procedures?
Right. So question is, how do you allot your time? Is building practice. Okay, building practice. Vascular interventional practice. It's typically I assign myself. I'm in private practice. Even if you're an academic institution, you get some support through the ER, through your inpatients, but not complete enough for you to work. Even me, Prakash, we spend at least 1 day a week in the afternoon after hours to spend with our referring physician, somebody new, somebody to reinforce, that we learned from Dr. Sharma. Okay. The very important to have 1 day a week at least. I make it a point to do marketing myself. You can be smartest guy, you can have a most skilled person, but if the community doesn't know about it, you cannot get faster. You have to get out there and meet them and have one-on-one conversation. That makes the biggest difference. If you go and meet somebody in their office and they know what you are, what you do, one-on-one, 10 minutes time with them makes a huge difference. 1 a week, 52 in a year. Even if they send 1 patient per year, 52, 1 per week, the plenty of referrals you have in the year. Minimum, that's all.
Yeah, I think in the beginning it's tough, and I think you have to understand what market you're walking into. A lot of places will already have built-in referral patterns which they're sending people into, and sometimes it's difficult to kind of penetrate into that. A place like New York, it's very tough. It's already been established for a long time. But one of the things that is always available for you is call cases that always you can start off with. Like you talk about. You hear about the 3 A's all the time, right? Being affable, being able, and being available. Availability is probably one of the biggest ones. And when you do these cases, going back to Dr. Attanti's point, that one-on-one communication is important. Every patient that you do has a PCP, and oftentimes will have a cardiologist or a wound care or podiatry person. That person should be getting a personal phone call with your cell phone number and say, hey, I was on call. This patient of yours came in. I took care of them. This is going to be my follow-up plan for you. And if there's anything that you need from me, feel free to reach out again. You do that for a while, and you do build up your own kind of referral pattern. They might not initially start off sending everything to you, and you have to understand that, but eventually they may think about you when a certain kind of patient comes up.
Yeah, the 1 phone call will bring you 3 more patients. That was the rule of thumb we had. Yes, and meeting them makes a lot more long-term relationship with them. You call them, hey, I've never met you, I'm taking care of your patient in the hospital, I would like to come by and meet you sometime after the hour, after work. At 5 p.m., you go show up in their office, they're your fan for a long time.